Good morning, everyone. We're here with Behind the Scenes at Your Teen with our editorial team. And today we're going to talk about tracking. We're going to talk about old school tracking. I'm going to tell an old school tracking story. And then we're going to talk about how we also have or have not tracked our kids using their phones. So I'm going to start off the story with old school tracking, where I live in a community where people don't normally walk on the main streets. People walk in the neighborhoods, but on the main streets, there's not a lot of walking. So once I dropped off my daughter at a Starbucks for her to study with a friend, and about half hour into it, I start getting texts from a friend saying, "Do you know that your daughter's walking on Main Street?" Which is unheard of. Nobody walks on Main Street. So I call her and I said, "What are you doing walking on Main Street?" And she's like, "Oh my God, Mom, how do you know everything?" And I said, "Because you have 100 mothers in this community who know your face. And I got a call. You told me you were at Starbucks. So now where are you?" And she's like, "We're on our way to McDonald's to get some food." So she was not pleased with that. And she did realize that maybe when I told her that she had 100 mothers in the community, she kind of started believing me. So that is my old school tracking. But I have one more quick one. My daughter got a ride home from practice one day with a friend who happened to have a bright orange SUV. It was very obvious. So a couple of days later, I saw his mother at the grocery store, and I said, "Hey, tell your son thank you so much for driving my daughter home from practice." And she said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yeah, his orange SUV pulled into my driveway, and it was him." And she says, "Oh, thanks for letting me know, because he's not allowed to have anybody with him because he just got his license." So he was totally busted. So that's my old school tracking. So I'm going to pass it to Jody, see if she has any stories.
Oh, Eka, you left me. Maybe that was her mic drop moment. So I'm nodding my head when Eka told the story about seeing her daughter get dropped off in an orange car. Just related to that, my daughter had posted a picture when she was in somebody else's car doing something that, and it was at the time also when you were not really allowed. They had the graduated driver's license, so they were not allowed to have that many people in the car. And actually, my other child showed me the picture, so she got busted that way. So that was a different kind of tracking. I actually have never used tracking. I have used the old school method multiple times with the phone calls and talking to people about what's going on and hey this, but we never really did use the apps to track our kids. I don't know, maybe it was, I just remember when I first got a cell phone, I actually hated it and would leave it in my car because I hated the idea that people could reach me and would know where I was, even if I wasn't home, or that they could get a hold of me. And I still sort of hate it, but now I'm obsessed with it just like everybody else. And I can't, leave it anywhere, or I have to go find it as soon as I can't find it. But yeah, we just never did. Now, I believe my husband does have some kind of tracking on of my daughter, and it's really helpful when she is driving somewhere that's a long distance and we know where she is. And I know that my kids also kind of track their friends. It's a way for them to kind of know where people are and keep in touch. And it is a little bit of a safety thing for some ways that they can look out for each other. But I don't know if that passed me by or whether I'll add it on at some point, but we didn't do it. And knock wood, so far so good, or I guess also the less you know, the better. I don't know the answer to that. So I'll pass it over to Kamira.
Thank you. Good morning. I do the old school tracking a la Eka, but I'll bring us into the current tracking. So when my son the youngest finally could get a cell phone, I made sure that I could track him on the phone. In the beginning, he wasn't going anywhere I didn't know about or didn't take him to. I really started to look at it when he was biking 20 plus miles away from the house, and I would get nervous. And then I started to wean myself from it and try to establish a healthy distance. But then last summer happened, and he and his friend decided to take participate in some of the protests, and up went the cell phone again so I could see where they were marching and watch the TV at the same time. And it was not healthy at all. But now that we're not doing that anymore, I have returned to trying to wean myself. If I'm really curious where he is, text him and ask him what's up, or is everything okay, and save tracking for if he is unusually late or something like that. But I think if you can not obsess, which I found myself doing, it's a good tool. It's a good parenting tool. It's a good safety tool. A lot of families are using that 360 Life. And I'm going back and forth whether we should do that, because we now have a new driver, and I may let the new driver have the car for the summer to go back and forth to work and stuff. So I may sign up for that. I don't know if anybody here has experience with it. I'm going to go up to Sharon.
Hey, so I will start by saying, you know how, remember you used to be the perfect parent back before you had any children, and then you had children and you started to realize, oh yeah, all the things I said, maybe I spoke a little too soon. So I'm not going to do that. I have, my oldest is the only one who has a cell phone. The second one will be getting a cell phone this summer. And so far with the oldest, we haven't done any tracking, but we've also been in a pandemic. So I can't say, and he doesn't have a license yet. So I'm not going to say, oh no, I'll never track, I'll just trust my kid and I won't be hovering. I'm open to the possibility that we might want to use that tool, especially as he starts going farther. If he was biking 20 miles or he was going downtown to protest, yeah, I'd probably want that. Or if he was driving long distances, I remember sometimes my mother not knowing where one of my siblings was and literally pacing, looking out the window, waiting for that hour and a half, no way to call, no way to track. I don't doubt for a second that if they could have tracked us, especially when we were driving places like that they would have. So I'm totally, I'm resisting for as long as I can, but I think the understanding is that if either there's a reason that I can't be trusting what I'm hearing about where they are, or it's just, a driving thing where I just, I'd like to be able to know where they are so I can sleep or something like that. I'm open to it. And I would love to hear people's experiences from whoever's watching. I mean, tell me what I don't know yet. Oh, here we go. Yeah, Karen's saying it's great for when the teen has to drive 30 to 60 minutes away for soccer games. I mean, it's just nice if they're going to be gone for hours that you can just know, okay, they're there and they're safe. So I would appreciate that. And I think I will probably use that at some point. I'm going to pass it over to Jessica.
Hello. So my mother loves Life 360 so much. And part of it, she thinks it's the funnest thing on the planet. Like she'll just pull it up randomly. Like, look, this is where Aunt Janie is, and this is where your cousin Samantha is. Like she has not just like, the immediate family, but she has like everyone that she knows that has Life 360 in our family. She's just so excited to see where they are, except for me and my little brother, who have both refused, just because I hate the idea of not, like, I don't care if my mother tracks me. I just hate the idea of my phone knowing, and I know that like it knows and it's probably selling my information to whoever, but like it just makes me feel so weird, which is a problem because I am the person in my family who has never texted "I'm here" and never will text "I'm here" because I will never remember to text that I am here, safe and sound, and not crashed the car. So I probably should get it just because I know that it would give my mom peace of mind to be able to just kind of pop on her phone like, oh yeah, she survived the 10-minute drive to her house. the most that it's ever come up. Wow. What on earth was that sentence? No, when I was a teenager, my friend's mom did some of the tracking stuff and didn't realize that it would ping would ping my friend every time she decided to track track my friend, so, and which was very funny because every time it was like, somebody's tracking your phone, we were just at the house playing video games, like, we're the most boring people on the planet, you don't need to track us, we're not going anywhere. But I'll pass it on to Sue.
Okay, so Eka's story about the moms telling each other, I think there's such a distinction between those two stories, because the ratting out your kid to someone else, their kid to them, like, hey, saw your kid walking on the street that no one goes on. I found it to be very risky to do that. It wasn't always well received, but the innocent, like, tell your son thanks for coming, dropping her off, that's amazing. Like, he gets caught and you're not even ratting him out. So, in my circle of friends and community, it wasn't always, you sometimes had to hold back what you saw. Jen's coming on. Good. Hi, Jen. Welcome. I am telling my story and then I'll pass to you. But I want to say that I'm so ambivalent about all of these things because I use none of them. And yes, there were totally things that they tell me about now that I never knew about, but I kind of didn't mind the ignorance is bliss. And I'm also not 100% sure what primitive need I have to say to my kids, text me when you get there, because there's nothing that not texting helps. Like it's like a funny thing. And often it's a part of my goodbye, but when they do text me, I'm like, oh, that was so nice of them to remember because they were out of sight and out of mind. So I don't know. It's this, I think it's something deeply primitive about us where like following where our loved ones are. But I know if I had the ability and the desire to do it, I would have been driven crazy. So I don't know what the right answer is. I'm going to share Karen's next comment and then pass it to Jen. Our teen daughter does jobs in the community, and I want to be able to see that she's where she said she was going. We've had some young boys run off the road and their family went that's hard, 72 hours without being able to find them. Yeah, so I guess my ambivalence, Karen, is around the need to know, like where it's set up so that you could use it, but the ability to self-control, which I'm not sure I would have been able to do. I also didn't read my kids' diaries and I didn't follow their keystrokes, but occasionally something came in front of me that I didn't know I wasn't supposed to read. And then I didn't want that damn information. So, because it put me on high alert for things that maybe would have resolved themselves without knowing. So I think it's the blessing and curse story here. And now I'm going to let Jen tell her wisdom.
Good morning. Sorry I'm late. I didn't get to hear everybody else's take on this, but I have a feeling I'm more in the Sue camp, which is ignorance can be bliss. I love the ability to know if they're safe, but I don't have the need to know their every movement. And I will tell you a funny story about how the need to know kind of backfires at times. One time my husband and I were out of town. The girls were old enough to be home alone, left unsupervised. I wasn't worried about parties, anything like that. It really was fine. But we were out of town for a wedding, and I think I had texted them to ask for something, ask some question, and wasn't hearing, and that was a little concerning. So I did reluctantly go on the find my friends, find my people thing, and I looked and I saw that my daughter's cell phone was at the police station. So my brain obviously went to the worst possible scenario, which is something awful has happened. Either she's in trouble or there's a problem and she's at the police station, and I felt my adrenaline going and my mama bear instincts all kicked in. And now I'm really dialing with abandon. And then I had another thought, which is maybe I should just enlarge that map a little tiny bit. And I did. And I saw that she was not, in fact, at the police station. She was at the grocery store buying groceries so she could make her own dinner. And I talked myself off the ledge, and I realized this is the cutting edge. Like, it's good, it's bad, and you have to use it with wisdom. So luckily I hung up the phone before I made that call to say, why are you at the police station? Because I would have felt very foolish. So one of the things I don't like about the tracking thing is that I myself do not care to be tracked. I don't need them all up in my business. And my kids are a little older now, so I don't feel like I need to be all up in theirs either. There's one parent in our house who isn't me who kind of likes it better. For everybody, he likes to keep his little eye on what everybody's doing because he's a worrier. He is such a worrier. He worries about everything, and it's partly his job. But that makes all of us feel a little like suffocated at times. I hope he's not listening. I don't think he's listening. So
sorry, Jen. Why don't you read what Katie has to say? Because
yeah, she says, 30 years ago, my parents would call the home of where I said I would be and ensure a parent was home to supervise. Amen. Yes, my parents too. It was like this, Katie. Like, tell me if this looks familiar. And who else will be at the party? And will there be any parents home? And if I call that number, will the parent answer? That's what it was like in my house. So yeah, you were not getting away with nothing. Also,
right.
People just knew. They knew. Like you saw all the cars parked in front of the house where the parents were out of town. You did not need GPS to tell you there's a party going on there, right? So anyway, I had no words of wisdom. Sorry. Back to you, Sue.
Okay, well, I'm just going to share. This is going to cover our screen, but Kimberly says, I use 360 and I have no problem with it. We are not as connected in the neighborhood where someone will know my children well enough, nor do we know our kids' friends' parents, so it helps a lot. I also use the Find My Phone app to beep at my kids who aren't responding to my text, or I was sitting outside the soccer field to tell my kid to put on her mask while sitting on the bench. That's great, Kimberly. I'm so glad it works for you. So it's a tough conversation, though. We all know that that annoying phrase of slippery slope couldn't be truer with these kind of devices and how you can really use them to a point where it's uncomfortable, but also feel really safe knowing that you have it on there. So I guess that's all we've got to say. Does anybody else want to jump in with any response? Oh, Eka, yay, Eka.
So I don't know about your kids, but at the beginning when my kids got cell phones, they were notorious for losing them. I mean, it was ridiculous. And so they ended up turning on the app so they could find their phones. Like they would lose them like outside in the backyard or whatever. And so then they would turn it on and it would make it beep so they could track their phone. So they actually did it for that reason. And then the other one is my daughter, when she was living in Boston, left her phone in the lift and called the Lyft driver, and he said he didn't have it. And she sat at work with the app open on her computer at work and watched her phone drive around Boston the entire day and was so annoyed. And when it actually went down her street, she called my husband and said, I think it's coming down the street where I work. My husband was like, do not go out and try to stop the Lyft driver. But she was so mad because her phone had gotten stolen. So they turned it on for that reason. So that was on them, and then we could use it. All right, Jen's got one. Oh, it's bringing more and more stories.
Oh, that just brought back such good memories of a really embarrassing story that we took a family trip to Williamsburg, which was fabulous. My kids loved it. They were teenagers and they loved it. So that's just a side trip. We'll talk about that some other day. I lost my phone and I was in a panic. Could not figure out how I lost my phone, but it's somewhere on this 4-street block of Williamsburg. So my kids very intelligently said, well, you can you can ping it and then you'll hear it because it's probably around you somewhere. So they kept pinging it and they're like, it's here somewhere really close by, but we cannot figure out where it is. It turned out it was in my husband's pocket. He had picked it up for me because I left it on the table, and he was in the blacksmiths at Williamsburg, where it's not supposed to be cell phone era, and the phone just kept making the horrible screeching noise and he couldn't turn it off. So use that feature with caution.
Okay, I'm going to share some of the comments here. So Katie says, our kids continue to struggle with agency. The world is inherently safe despite media reports that people hurting our kids are largely people we know. And then her next comment is so true. We all seem to be parenting with a thin veil of terror on our hearts. The locus of control has become the adult. Yeah, it's hard to get rid of that thin veil of terror. Okay, so Stephanie apparently daughter lost her phone also. Kimberly says, this is funny. My kids also track me on 360. And if they see me at Starbucks, they'll ask me to get them something. Okay, and here's Katie says, Kimberly, I'm sorry I didn't share it. And we wonder why anxiety and depression are at off their charts. Not a fan of tracking. Taking risks is developmentally appropriate. Let them fail. Yeah, it's a constant balance. We are here constantly trying to figure out that right balance. So everyone, thank you so much for participating today. We love getting your comments, and we will see you next week. Have a great week.